Hey everybody, welcome back to Video. So today we're going to be doing a series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, and I got a different type of video for you tonight because as of yesterday, Gameboy Wars, the Game Boy game, has been translated into English by a developer called Nezz, and I figured why not test out this new awesome translation on MiSTer FPGA, where I know a lot of my audience is going to be watching and playing. And honestly, Gameboy Wars has one of the most interesting and unique intro sequences of any Game Boy game I've ever seen. Before we get too far involved, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel something kind of wants to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But you're probably most familiar with this series from the Advanced series of Wars games, and they're absolutely some of the most fun you can have. For the most part, when you think about Game Boy, you think of RPGs, platformers, and games that are kind of pocket-shaped and sized. Game Boy Wars is definitely different than that. It's a tactical turn-based action game where you basically have to design your army, move around the board, capture neutral cities, destroy your opponent's infantry and other troops, and basically take over the entire playfield for you to see a victory condition, and that is a ton of fun. And for the longest time, while you could look up a translation and kind of poke your way through the game, you would have to do it in full Japanese, which makes games like this much harder because they are resource management heavy. You need to know all of the text, and while you can kind of poke your way through, actually being able to see this in full English so you don't have to worry about trying to translate in your head, it's just an absolute blast. And I love featuring videos like this on the channel because there's so many new developments in retro gaming. If there's something recently that's happened I've missed, leave me a comment down below, and you never know, I might turn it into a video. But this is the type of stuff that I absolutely love. The entire Wars series has been a joy to play over my gaming lifetime, and getting a new game in English is just so much fun, and this is where the entire franchise gets its start, and you can see so much of the DNA of what this series would become right here. The basic function is you have your different factories, and you can produce different infantry units out of there. From here you want to siege cities that's going to restock your supplies as well as your money, and you can create more troops from there. You start with the basic infantry, you can get rocket launcher troops, you can get tanks, and anything in between. But you do want to manage your resources carefully, because if you build too many of one type of unit, you're going to be out of money for the other types. And once you actually get into direct combat against your opponent, it's basically a rock paper scissors sort of situation. There's always one unit that's going to be better against another unit, but if you bring the wrong troops into a battle, you're going to get absolutely decimated, lose that unit, as well as have to spend the money on replenishing them. Because this is turn-based, you do everything you want in one turn, and then you hand it over to your opponent. And I would say the AI in this game is quite intelligent and relatively ruthless. You're going to have to get very good very quick if you want to actually see a victory in this game. That is just how it works, but you can do two-player as well. You can set the second unit to computer-controlled or an actual human, and you can just basically hand the controller or the Game Boy back and forth to be able to just kind of take turns. This is so much fun, and here on MiSTer FPGA, of course, it's working spectacularly. I tested this on software emulation, I tested this on MiSTer FPGA, and I played it on my 70-inch 4K, and it looked absolutely spectacular. The sprites just totally pop, the black and white looks so good. This is just so much fun to see visually, and again on MiSTer FPGA, it's going to give you such a great way to play this game, and a great game it is, and I can't celebrate enough getting these new translations, because again, this was just so hard to actually navigate around back in the day. Every single bit of text, every numerical value, everything would basically confuse you. Now, you can just sit down and play the game like it's any other English release, and trust me, you're going to get engrossed in this one. Navigating all of the maps, developing a strategy, and overall trying to figure out how you want to proceed is going to be mind-bendingly difficult, especially in later maps. These things can get huge. You'll have so many units on screen at once, and you basically have to predict what your opponent's going to do in their next turn and both block against that as well as be on offense to try to actually get that victory condition. And the best part is it's got a fun soundtrack. It's that classic Game Boy beat boop bop we all know and love. So go ahead and listen for 30 seconds, and I'll be right back. That's just a total 8-bit vibe, and I'm 100% there for it. But you'll see here as we've gotten further into the round, my opponent has a lot of different troops out, and because they captured one more city earlier than I did, they had more resources, so they have now put tanks on the board where I am one turn behind. This is the type of game, once you get put on the back foot when you're on your heels, it can be very difficult to recover from, so you really want to think what you're going to do, take an entire look at the board, and decide a strategy like 5 to 6 turns ahead before you actually start doing anything, because not capturing one extra city until now really left me resource short and I wasn't able to get the tanks out, and that's going to put me at a total disadvantage, because think of combat this way. If you bring a fist to a knife fight, you're going to lose. If you bring a knife to a gun fight, you're going to lose. If you bring a gun to a bazooka fight, you're going to lose. And if you bring a bazooka to a tank fight, you're also going to lose, because you'll see here against direct combat, depending on the power of your opponent's troops, you could either draw, succeed, or end up losing more of your units than you would like. And that is going to be a very big deal, because once you get low on units, you have to use a turn to manufacture them, and you can't move them in the same turn. So sending something like 2 infantry units up against tanks, probably not the best decision I made in my entire playthrough. But that's where all the fun and entertainment in a game like this comes. Realizing your mistakes, thinking about how you would do it better next time, because you'll see their infantry against those actual armored tanks, they lost 1 tank, I lost 6 of my troops. I can no longer withstand an assault from that tank group, so I'm either going to have to move out of the way or move more troops in so I can basically flank them, because position on the board is going to be important as well. A West Point graduate I am not. I am definitely losing this match. But even when you're not doing well, you're still having a ton of fun. This is definitely the type of love it or hate it game that people either obviously love or hate, hence the term. But if you're into these things and you've never played Game Boy Wars, the day is today, because now it's in full English, and hopefully some other languages come after that, because I know a decent amount of you speak another language, English not being your first, so maybe you'll get a translation as well. But this is just always fun to see. I love when fans go into old games, translate them, and make them available for a wider audience, because the entire franchise outside of this game, I believe, has always been available in English. It was just this one title you could never play without having to basically go through blind, and now that is completely different, and that is a ton of fun. And trust me, this is the type of game where you can have a lot of fun against a CPU opponent, but if you actually have a game night, crack open some beers, and let your friends take control of the second team, you're going to have even more fun. And if you're on MiSTer FPGA and you throw it on a television, everything's going to be plainly obvious to see, which is a blast as well. I didn't test this on Analog Pocket yet, but I have heard that it does work from other people. And you'll see here in the options menu, when you set up the teams and everything else, it's all in English, and I recommend you switch the message to fast, or else you're going to be taking more time between turns. And there's a ton of different maps in the game, some simpler, some more complex. This map here has a bridge in the middle. If you know anything about combat, and I know very little, bridges can be very precarious situations, and you'll see here that basically the rest of the map is completely blocked off outside of the bottom. You only have 2 ways to traverse, so you really have to be on top of your strategy here if you want to see a victory. But even if you spend an hour on a map and you lose, it makes you hungry to come right back and try to get that victory. This game gets its hooks into you, it won't let go, and suddenly you realize multiple hours have gone by and you thought it was 20 minutes, and that's the highest compliment I can play to any game whatsoever. And Nezz, the translator, did an amazing job. Everything is lined up text-wise. The translation is great. Obviously, it's not a ton of sentences or story, it's just words, but everything looks like it's a native English release like Nintendo did it back in the day. So if you want to check this game out, it's available pretty much everywhere online. You can play it on MiSTer FPGA, on Analog Pocket, on software emulation, and if you have a flash cart in your original Game Boy, you can play it there too. But whatever you do, don't skip it, because you'll be missing out. Short of that, if you want to see more videos like this, leave me a comment down below, but we're done and I'm going to try to take this bridge. See you next time. Bye-bye.